All right. Hey, Jordan. So, we've been talking about doing a video like this since I want to say last year in July around this. Well, it's June now, but last year in July, we talked about doing a video like this and we really just never got to it.
Yep.
But here we are, June 25th.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we finally have sat down to film this video, but more than filming a video, we've sat down to have a conversation.
Yep.
And my hope for this conversation is selfishly for me to be able to come back to it and be encouraged. But my hope is for that someone else out there who is struggling with suicidality or who has survived a suicide attempt, or someone like you who loves someone who struggles with suicidality, that they can listen to our conversation, feel seen, feel encouraged, and choose to stay another day.
It's good.
You know, Jordan, we've had many conversations over the years, and I don't want the listener to hear this conversation and think it's something that we don't do, that we sat down to have this conversation as something rare.
Yep.
We have conversations like this all the time. The only difference is we have cameras filming us today.
That's right.
But I want to start this conversation, though, as your little sister and just say thank you.
Mm.
Because I cannot even begin to describe the impact you have had in my life as my big brother.
Mm.
So let me set the stage a little bit. Let's go back to July 3rd, 2022. The day that I almost died. You almost lost your little sister. You know, that's the day that I tried to take my life. I don't know if you found out July 3rd. I don't know if you found out July 4th. But the reality is that it was around that time that you found out.
Yep.
And I know a little bit later you're going to ask me if I remember what I felt like when I woke up. But I want to start with you as someone who loves me. What did it feel like when you found out that I had tried to end my life and that I was in the hospital?
Yeah, so it was July 3rd or 4th. I was at my in-laws' house, and like I vaguely remember because I remember being in the driveway, like got a text from mom or a call from mom or something. And I'm trying to go back and just remember, like it's an interesting thing because you're experiencing multiple emotions at once. The main one though is relief, actually, because it could have been another text or a call. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's immediate relief, but then there was urgency because for whatever reason, I knew that I'm just going to say it. I feel like the way that I'm just going to tell the truth. That's what you want. I didn't really trust anyone else to come and I think say the things or do the things that I felt like I knew to do or felt compelled to do, felt purposed to do. So it was immediate relief and then urgency. I don't remember I didn't feel angry. I didn't, I think it was more like I just had to get there. And so that was the first like action that I had to take. And so I remember telling my wife and the whole deal and, and then drove to where you were. So yeah, it's a really I'm trying to go back and remember it. I vaguely remember being in the driveway, relief, and then I've got to go. And so I went.
I find it interesting to me that and a bit healing to me, that you say that you didn't feel anger,
Mm-hmm.
because honestly, up until this point, I figured everyone who loved me was angry at me for what I did.
Right.
And the fact that you can sit here, look me in my eyes, and say that you weren't angry, that that really moves me on the inside. But, I think the bigger story that we should capture here isn't what you felt immediately after,
Mhm.
but the journey that we have gone on.
Yeah.
Because if I were to go back, there were many times before July 3rd, 2022, that I had experienced suicidal thoughts, intense suicidal thoughts, painful suicidal thoughts. And I'm not going to lie, there have been many times since July 3rd, 2022, that I've experienced intense and painful suicidal thoughts. And for the purpose of a loved one who loves someone who is trying to support and love someone who experiences suicidality or who may have attempted to die by suicide, I want to give that perspective of what that feels like for the person who's going through it. Because I think you do a really good job of talking about how to support someone and like just our relationship, you as a man and as a big brother.
Mhm.
But I really want to bring the perspective of someone who is struggling because I know there's going to be someone watching this video who maybe be considering ending their life today.
Mhm.
They may be planning on writing letters later on tonight and spending their last moments with the people who love them.
Right.
And that's the perspective that I want to bring to this conversation because that has been me so many times.
Right.
And it's hard to even describe the amount of like how badly that hurts. Because when I'm experiencing thoughts of suicide, it's not because I don't love the people who love me.
Right.
And it's not because I'm not thankful for my life. It's because the pain that I'm experiencing feels like it's too much. Like there's no way I can withstand the pain. And think of it this way. When you feel like you're on fire, and let's say you're in a burning building, I've heard it described this way and it really resonates. Let's say you're in a burning building and you're on fire. So you know that you can't get away from the fire. You're up tall and like you're at many stories. So you can either stay there and burn alive or you can jump out of that building and just end it right there. And for someone who's experiencing thoughts of suicide, or at least for me personally, that's what it has felt like. But on the other side of that, we're not in a burning building. I don't have to jump out to save myself. What I have learned since July 3rd, 2022, is that there are other options, that suicide just gets rid of all those other options. So um Jordan, take me back to let's go back to before July 3rd, 2022, because I mentioned earlier that there have been many times before that day that I had struggled with suicidality. And if we were to go back to when I was a teenager, you were a young adult, I'm struggling with self harm, depression, things like that, and you're just trying to find your ground as as a man and as a young person. Do you remember the first time that you do you remember what it was like to learn that your sister was struggling with depression and self-harm? Because I remember you describing yourself as more ignorant of mental illness, mental health, mental fight before your experiences with me. So, kind of take us on that journey of really learning, because I imagine there are people out there who just don't understand. What would you say to someone who doesn't understand like you used to?
Yeah, I think it's been a decade, a little over a decade of like real hands-on crash course education. And I think it starts with like willingness is the word that I think about. I think mental health and all of that comes with stigma. Unfortunately, it just does. Um, and so I think for me personally, I remember, I remember one time specifically when we were at lunch and you opened up quite a bit about things I'd never heard before. The reality is, and we talked about this many times, is like because of where I was at in my life, my age, and our age gap, it always left this like gap, you know? Like one is not stuff that we talked about in the house necessarily, so I didn't know anything. Things made sense later, but it's not like we ever talked about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was so disconnected during my high school years, then became an adult and left. And then, I feel like it wasn't until I was like, 23, 24, 25. Um, and so, I think one, as a person, I just already like my natural tendency, especially when I was younger and a little bit more immature, I always wanted to fix it, and not like the way that like men typically fix things. One, we grew up with dysfunctional relationships with our fathers. We have different dads. I always felt a responsibility to have to like be something. I wanted to be, but I also felt responsibility to have to try to be something. And I naturally, as a person, want to remove things that stand in somebody's way. And so I think there was a lot of ignorance because no one talked about it. I don't remember talking about this in school. I don't remember talking about this with friends. Obviously, I knew what suicide was and I knew what all that stuff was, but it's like it's a different level of alarm when someone you love, care about, grew up with, is dealing with stuff. And then, you do deal with loads of emotions that you have to kind of pick out at one time and be like, how am I going to deal with this? And what am I supposed to do with it? And so it's been year after year, conversation after conversation, growth upon growth and change to get to the point where I felt like it is unfortunate because I would have never wanted that day to come. But weirdly enough, I felt really ready. And so that's maybe another word that I felt is more than responsibility that day, July 3rd or whatever, to show up because I felt ready. I felt like actually prepared to be able to deal with whatever was on the other side of it. And so that's where I think the responsibility piece came into play. And so I think the whole thing has given me a real-time hands-on like education into how to love and support, grow, and you could speak into this. I feel like I've done well in getting to places where we've been able to challenge and that be received too. And grow together. And that's where I think the whole thing has been, where you also have chosen to not just settle. And so it's been such a journey, I think, which is why I think conversations like this probably are important to somebody because I'm a fighter for hope. I think that's been That's literally been my job.
Yeah.
Is I fight for hope. And so once again, like it's another emotion that I'm telling you, a million emotions that happen, right? But I just knew like I've got to get there because there's hope, like there was no period at the end that day. It wasn't over. It wasn't done. And so I'm going, it's not over. It's not done, but we got to move quick, and we got to move with, just quickness. And not to save the day. I think that's really important. It wasn't about saving the day. It was about coming and being present. And that moment I remember very well. And I remember the things that I said, and I remember being in the hospital very clearly. And so I don't know if that's where we're going next, but I know the precursor to all of that was a crash course of real-time education that would have only come from being willing to listen and learn. And again, I think what's cool about our relationship is you've been able to also, like, we've not walked on eggshells, and I think that that's cool. Truly.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go into all of that in this conversation, but we have had some conversations that we can laugh at now, but in the moment
They were hard.
They were hard, but they were really beautiful, and they were fruitful.
Yes.
And they created a different level of trust and challenge for both of us. And I think that's actually kept us grounded and healthy. I think in our relationship is no eggshells.
For sure.
Yeah. I think if we could write a book, I mean, that'd probably be a good one. Is
no
eggshells. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's made this, I think, really, really impactful over the last decade. So
there's a couple things you just said that stand out to me. One of them kind of breaks my heart, not in a way of like, oh, what you just said makes me so sad, but the fact that you said ready or prepared to help your sister through a suicide attempt. That, while that's a reality, that's our reality, and it's so many other people's reality, it shouldn't be. Because at the end of the day, the epitome of suicide is hopelessness, feelings of hopelessness.
And can I speak to that real quick? I want to make a real clear clarification.
Yes.
Clear clarification. The readiness that I felt. So it's true. Yes. It's like, I want to be really clear about this. I think this is important because the readiness that I felt wasn't that I was anticipating that day would come.
Okay.
But it's more that because it did, and I had opportunities leading up to that for us to be able to build the relationship that we did around this subject, that I felt ready to come and not be judgmental. I felt ready to come and actually be present. I felt ready to be, like I said, responsible. So I just want that to be clear. It wasn't that I like had my emergency bag packed for the day that one day, Whitney might attempt suicide. It's that it's the fact that you did, I felt ready to actually come and be available to you in a way that actually could serve you. And so hopefully that clarification is there even for someone that might be listening, because I do think it's important that's what it was. Because when we're ruled by fear and we're ruled by anger, then I probably wouldn't have showed up that day. I probably would have waited and delayed because I would have had to deal with myself. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't have those emotions in my heart, I was actually able to come and serve you in that moment. So anyways, that was really important for me to say. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Let's go to the hospital room.
I'm there. I remember.
So I remember too.
Yeah.
And it's the next day. I had woken up after planning to never wake up again.
That's right.
And the feelings that I was feeling in those moments were so much shame, so much anger, and so much sadness.
Yeah.
I wish I could look at you today and say that I woke up after trying to die by suicide, and I was so thankful to be alive. But the reality is that I woke up angry. I wouldn't look at anyone, and honestly, no one was really looking at me. I was sitting in a room where doctors and social workers were talking to mom. Mom was talking to doctors and social workers. They were trying to figure out what to do with me after that event. And I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know that you were about to walk into the room. And but when you did, my heart kind of two things happened. When you walked into the room, I remember feeling like, oh man, like he must be so mad at me. But at the same time, when you walked into that room, I was like, great, like someone's about to actually see me. Because if there's one thing about our relationship, Jordan, you've always been that voice in my life, that person in my life who calls out everything good, who points me towards hope, who points me towards life, who reminds me that I have purpose, who reminds me that I'm gonna live and that I can live. You, even now, when I'm struggling, you never make me feel like I'm less than for struggling, or like you don't freak out and try to like convince me to go into the mental hospital, things like that, or try to figure out what to do with me. And so I remember in that moment on July 4th, when I'm still in the medical hospital, not the mental hospital, you walked into the room and I'm just looking down and I'm crying. And when you walked in, the doctor was in the room talking to me and mom about next steps, where they're going to send me and things like that. But it's almost like I wasn't even there until you walked in and you were like, look at me, Whit, and you asked me what I saw in your eyes when I looked at you. I don't remember the exact words I said when you asked me what I saw in your eyes when I looked at you, but I do remember how I felt. And I know what I see when I look into your eyes today as a 30-year-old woman looking at you. And I just see someone who cares about me.
Mhm.
I see someone who would go to war for me.
Mhm.
I see someone who would be devastated if I were to die by suicide.
Mhm.
And that honestly is part of what keeps me going even today, is the fact that you showed up that day full of love. I mean, the love that you show towards me through everything that we've been through, all the conversations we've had. You don't remember this, you say you don't, but all the times I called you screaming and cussing you out and just angry, you have always stayed consistent. You've stayed loving, non-judgmental.
Mm.
And I think those are the things that really make the difference for people who are struggling with mental illness.
One thing I've learned from Jesus is I remember the story when Lazarus died, and here's Mary and Martha, and Jesus waits days and then he finally goes, you know, and I believe Martha met him, you know, and then Mary comes out, and I believe she said something along the lines of, if you only got here sooner, you know. Jesus had a purpose and a point in all of that. But, eh, if there's one thing I learned and have learned and have tried to like always keep in my heart is in that moment, Jesus didn't ridicule Mary. He didn't rebuke her. Why are you, why don't you have faith, woman? You know what I mean? He just sat there and he wept. The anger that he felt later, what he felt was anger towards sin and death. It's like anytime I've ever felt a level of anger or frustration, it's never toward you as a person. It's toward the opposition and the thing that would ever create a lie or a narrative or a scenario that would make you not feel worthy to live. And that's something that I want to eradicate. But I know that Jesus was present. I was like, I just want to be present. The quicker that we can get to overcoming shame, the quicker we get to freedom.
Yeah.
And that day at the hospital, that was my only objective. We got everyone out of the room, and it was look me in the eyes. Because the moment we can do that and we stop hiding, it breaks something. And I remember a lot of what I feel like I vaguely remember a lot of what I shared with you that day. And I knew that the road ahead, you know what I mean? Like, that was a big part of it. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know what comes next, but I just knew like the moment was we at least needed to get you to at least begin to break that thing of shame by just that one act alone.
Yeah.
Lift up your eyes and look at someone else in the eye.
Yeah.
And there's no shame. And I'm not angry at you.
Yeah.
And I think even going back to, I know this conversation, you wanted it to be helpful for other people. And I think that that's part of what that means to grow and learn and be willing. There's something so dynamic about presence in the midst of trauma and pain and decision. And there's nothing that can replace that. Yeah. And so that is a practice that I think even if someone else is struggling right now, looking in the eyes does something that nothing else can do. Because closing our eyes is our first way to be able to not just find solitude, but to really be able to hide against the world and shut the things out that we want to shut out. We close our ears, right? We bow our head. We hide in shame. The quicker we rid ourselves of shame, the quicker we can access levels of freedom into the worthiness that is already ours, not something that we have to earn or achieve. Yeah.
You know, shame is something. It's I think if I were to think back to what really led me that day after struggling with suicidal thoughts for so long, what really led me that day to take those actions to try to end my life was, of course, sadness and turmoil. But there was also a lot of shame, because shame, I felt shame for things that happened in my life as a teenager. I felt shame for things that had happened in my life as an adult. And then when I woke up after trying to die by suicide, that shame was still there. And then I have that conversation with you, and it's like when I looked at you that day, in that moment was the very first time since waking up after almost dying, was when I felt honestly, like, you pointed me towards Jesus that day. And I just remember something in my spirit was like, Witch, you gotta get up. Like, people need to see you get up after this. And so it was hard, after that. I would go to the mental hospital and stay there for a while. And after I got out of the mental hospital, I would be home for a couple months and then be back in the mental hospital. And that was a cycle for a while, but I knew I had to get up. I knew that as long as I kept my eyes, I know today, as a person who still, as you know, struggles with suicidal thoughts, the moment I open my eyes, the moment I look at someone, you, the moment I put my eyes toward Jesus, I'm just reminded that I gotta get up. There's a ripple effect that happens with suicide. There's a ripple effect that happens when people die by suicide, when people try to die by suicide, and it impacts every single person who knows that individual, every single person who loves that person. And there's just something in my spirit as a 30-year-old woman today who struggled with suicidal thoughts this week. There's something in my spirit that just knows I'm gonna live. And I gotta get up. Even if I'm crawling, I'm up still.
There's probably a million sermons of pastors and preachers who have probably referenced what I just referenced with Lazarus. But I love that you keep saying that, like I had to get up, because those are the words that Jesus said, Lazarus, get up. The reason I love that is because I don't know how many things in our life that we feel are just done.
Yeah.
When you think that your worth is dead, when you feel like your value, when you feel like everything that you've done, there's no way to come back from that, when you feel like you've hidden for 5 years, 10 years, then it adds up to 2 decades and you can't hold it in anymore, right? There's no future for me. Hope, all of these things feel deceased. They feel, and that's the thing about the waiting. Imagine Lazarus, their brother's dead. They wait 1 day, they wait 2 days, they wait 3 days, they wait you know what I mean? I'm sure, I cannot imagine how long that felt. And it's not like they were like, their anticipation was not that Jesus was going to come and heal him. She says it, if only you got here sooner. Yeah. What I love about Jesus is Jesus doesn't just give life, and he doesn't just perform resurrection. He says, I am the resurrection and I am the life. Like, I am these things. Earlier this week on Sunday, I was leading worship and I said, aren't you glad that good doesn't define God, God defines good? Yeah. It's different. It's who he is. And so when we command those things, right? And I'm not trying to get preachy. Okay. I know that there's probably going to be people that watch this that aren't Christian or of faith or whatever. And I want to respect that. And I honor that, but this is our true story. Yeah. And the reality is that we have learned together to trust God and to lift our eyes, to lay hold of a truth, so that it's not about disarming our emotion or our feelings. Those things are very valid. But every single day we have an opportunity to be able to lift our eyes up, to be able to get up. Get up for what? Unto what? What are we speaking? Why? What? Right? Yeah. And I think to turn this even into a more practical thing is that it's like, I've watched you live it though. I've watched you walk this out. I just got done telling my barber this morning your story. And he's like, that's astounding.
Yeah.
Because he knew bits and pieces. But to even see where you're at today is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah.
And nothing short of hard work and decisions and choices that you've made.
Yeah.
Second by second, not even week by week, month by month.
Yeah.
Dude, second by second, moment by moment. I got to chill out a little bit. Anyway, so I'm just saying how many things in our life, and for those of you listening, watching, whatever, like imagine the things in your life that you think are just without hope and are just dead. And what if I told you that they're not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that night on July 3rd, 2022, almost 4 years ago now, I thought a lot of things were dead, but I was wrong.
Yeah.
And my life today is proof of that.
That's right.
I thought my future was dead, but here I am 4 years later, working a full-time job, changing systems, making a difference.
That's right.
I thought my worth was dead, but I was wrong. I thought joy would never come back. Again, I was wrong. If I had died that day, I would have never had the opportunity to prove myself wrong. I would have never had the opportunity to experience joy again. I would have never had the opportunity to wake up in the morning and see the sunrise. You know, that when I was in the hospital, you wrote a song, and we'll end this conversation soon, but when I was in the hospital, you wrote a song called Sunrise, and a few of the lyrics go, tomorrow the sun will rise and so will you. You're not alone. You can hope just like you used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's our message. That's our message to people. Whether you're a person who's struggling or you're a person who loves someone who's struggling, we all need to know that, hey, like, tomorrow the sun's going to rise, and so will I, so will you,
Yeah.
so will your loved one. We're not alone, and we can hope.
That's right. Yep. I think it's easier said than done, for sure.
It is.
But I think that is our mission and our effort, even in just starting this first conversation. Because, gosh, I know we're keeping it at bay right now. I mean, we could talk for 3-4 hours.
We could.
And there's different things I think that can come from it. But I think just laying the foundation of hope, I think, is a big part of the mission.
Yeah.
And it's a fight for that. It's a fight for the person who's listening right now going, no, but you don't get it. And it's like, no, but we do.
Yeah.
And it's not about, we know every circumstance or situation, but we've witnessed and experienced some incredibly dark moments.
Yeah.
But what we've also experienced is the gift of a new day and what we can do with that.
Yeah.
And I think that we get to learn from the past. I'm not trying to be cheesy, but there is truly nothing we can do about the past.
Yeah.
We don't know if we will get the gift of tomorrow. We hope that we do.
Yeah.
But we can be present with today. And I think that that's really massive, because if God gives us the gift of tomorrow, then we can make decisions and choices today to be able to honor that and to be present today and to believe today and to have hope today and to do the thing right here in front of us.
Yeah.
That might be looking someone in the eyes today. That might be having a conversation today. We would not have been able to sit down and have this conversation 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I truly don't even think that we would have been able to have it last year.
Yeah.
But because we kept being given the gift of the next day.
Mm-hmm.
We kept making choices.
Mm-hmm.
We kept having conversations. We kept being challenged by one another. We kept the conversation open. We stopped, we didn't allow ourselves to walk on eggshells, and we kept believing
Yeah.
that, that has led us to today, where now we feel, not just capable and not even just responsible, like we have to do that, obligated, but truly joyed, like full of joy.
Yeah.
To be able to say, if we can do one thing that can help someone choose to stay and believe that there's hope, we'll open up the floor for that. And I think I've watched you do it as you've keynoted and as you've made content and as you've continued to use your voice, as you've continued to not just report from the other side of something, but from the middle of it.
Yeah.
I think you have decided to say, it's not about waiting to be perfect to speak up. You've chosen to speak up because you know that you've been given today. Mm-hmm. And you can't wait for tomorrow, next week, next month.
Yep.
Which is why we're sitting down today. Yeah.
And I have one last thought here.
Yes.
And that is, for someone who today, they can't sit down and have a conversation with their brother about what they're going through because they're in it right now. Like you said, we wouldn't have been able to do this last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So I want to talk to someone who today, they're in the trenches going through it. There's some advice I got from a good friend of mine, Kevin, and he told me, you always, just tell somebody. You're always going to find someone who wants you to stay alive, someone who wants you to not end your life. If it's not the first person you tell, you just keep telling someone. And that is something that I always tell other people, tell somebody. Because when you don't tell someone, just like we've talked about in this conversation today, when you don't tell somebody and you're hiding and you're living in shame, it's just going to intensify. It's going to grow. And so my encouragement to anyone struggling with suicidality is 1, look at someone. 2, tell them your pain. Because I guarantee that person, they're going to find someone who loves them. And if they can't, I love them.